Stop what you're doing. Right now, in this exact moment, notice the thought that just appeared in your mind. Where did it come from? Did you consciously summon it into existence? Did you sit down and decide, I'm going to think this particular thought right now? Or did it simply appear uninvited like a stranger walking through an open door? Here's what they don't tell you, what they've been hiding in plain sight for centuries. Your thoughts appear before you decide them. They emerge from somewhere deeper, somewhere beyond your conscious control, somewhere that exists outside the boundaries of what you believe to be you. The mind is not the thinker. It never was. And what you're about to discover in the next few minutes will completely shatter everything you thought you knew about consciousness, about reality, about the very nature of who you are. This isn't another self-help theory. This isn't positive thinking repackaged. This is the intersection of quantum physics and consciousness studies, and it's going to change everything you believe about where your thoughts actually come from. Let's start with something that's going to sound absolutely strange, maybe even impossible, but stay with me because this is where everything begins to make sense. In the world of quantum physics, subatomic particles exist as waves of probability until they're observed. They're everywhere and nowhere at once, suspended in a state of pure potential, flickering between existence and non-existence until someone looks. Until consciousness itself collapses the wave function and forces reality to choose a single outcome from an infinite sea of possibilities. This isn't philosophy. This isn't mysticism. This is hard science, proven in laboratories around the world, verified by thousands of experiments over the past 100 years. And it's been confusing physicists for over a century because it suggests something absolutely profound about the role of observation in creating reality. The famous double-slit experiment demonstrated this beyond any doubt. When scientists observed which slit a photon passed through, it behaved like a particle. When they didn't observe, it behaved like a wave, passing through both slits simultaneously. The act of observation literally changed physical reality. Now here's where it gets interesting, where quantum mechanics stops being abstract physics and starts being about you, about your mind, about your daily experience. Your thoughts work exactly the same way. Before a thought becomes conscious, before it rises to the surface of your awareness and announces itself in words and images and feelings, it exists in a cloud of possibilities, hundreds, maybe thousands of potential thoughts, flickering in your subconscious like radio signals in the dark, like stars before dawn, each one waiting for its moment to collapse into form. Your subconscious mind is processing millions of bits of information every single second. Sensory data streaming in from your environment, memories being triggered by subtle associations, emotions bubbling up from your nervous system, patterns being recognized, connections being made, associations forming and dissolving, all beneath the threshold of conscious awareness. And from this vast ocean of potential, from this quantum soup of possibility, something happens. Your awareness reaches down into that darkness and collapses one of those probability waves into a single concrete thought. Into language, into meaning, into something you can recognize and work with and believe is you. This isn't just a metaphor. This isn't poetic language trying to make science sound mystical. Scientists studying quantum cognition, a field that's been exploding over the last 2 decades, are proving this right now in peer-reviewed journals. They're demonstrating that human decision-making, memory formation, and perception follow quantum probability rules rather than classical logic. When you're trying to recall a memory, for instance, the memory doesn't exist in a fixed state in your brain. It exists as a probability distribution, and the act of remembering collapses that distribution into a specific memory, which is why every time you remember something, you're actually changing the memory slightly. Your mind doesn't create thoughts the way a factory creates products, with raw materials coming in one end and finished goods coming out the other. It selects them from an invisible field of potentials, from a quantum substrate that exists beneath conscious awareness, from a realm where all possible thoughts exist simultaneously until observation collapses one into your awareness. You're not the author of your thoughts. You're the observer. You're the one who collapses the wave. And the moment you observe, the moment your awareness touches that field of possibility, the wave collapses into a single thought, a single reality that you immediately and automatically believe is yours, that you claim ownership of, that you defend and identify with as if it defines who you are. Think about it. Have you ever wondered why thoughts seem to come from nowhere? Why you can be walking down the street completely lost in one train of thought, planning what you're going to say in a meeting or replaying a conversation from yesterday, and suddenly, without warning, a completely different idea pops into your head. A memory from childhood, a random song lyric, a solution to a problem you weren't even consciously thinking about. You didn't summon it. You didn't go looking for it. You weren't trying to think about that particular thing. It just appeared, fully formed, demanding your attention. Or why? When you're trying to solve a problem, you can think and think and think, forcing your mind to work, grinding away at it for hours and get absolutely nowhere, making no progress, feeling more frustrated with each passing minute. But then the moment you let go, the moment you step away and stop trying, maybe you go for a walk or take a shower or start doing something completely unrelated, the answer just shows up. Clear, obvious, perfect. As if it was waiting for you to get out of the way. That's not coincidence. That's not your brain finally getting its act together after you stop pressuring it. That's the quantum field delivering information that was always there, existing in a state of potential, waiting for you to tune into the right frequency to receive it, waiting for your consciousness to stop interfering and allow the collapse to happen naturally. So if you're not thinking your thoughts, if thoughts are selecting themselves from a field of probability and collapsing into your awareness without your conscious direction, then who or what is doing the observing? Who is the you that watches thoughts arise? Here's the truth, and this is going to change everything. You have two layers, two distinct aspects of consciousness operating simultaneously, two modes of being that most people confuse as one. The thinker and the witness. The thinker is the voice in your head, the narrator, the commentator, the one that never shuts up, that maintains a constant internal dialogue from morning until night. It's the part of you that plans your day, worries about the future, judges yourself and others, replays conversations looking for what you should have said, rehearses scenarios that will never happen, and generally keeps up a constant stream of mental chatter from the moment you wake up until the moment you fall asleep, and often even invades your dreams. Most people believe they are this voice. They identify completely with the thinker and assume that the thoughts it produces are the totality of their consciousness, that this voice is who they fundamentally are, and if they could just control this voice, make it more positive, more productive, more focused, then they would finally be happy. But the witness is something else entirely. The witness is silent. It's the part of you that notices the thinker. It's the awareness that watches thoughts come and go without getting caught up in them, without believing them, without identifying with them, without needing to change them or fix them or make them better. It's the space in which thoughts appear like clouds passing through an empty sky, like waves moving across the surface of the ocean while the depths remain perfectly still. The witness doesn't speak. It doesn't plan. It doesn't worry. It doesn't judge. It doesn't have an agenda or a narrative or a story about who you should be. It simply is. Pure awareness, pure presence. The eternal observer that has been watching your entire life unfold from behind the scenes. That was there when you were 5 years old. That will be there when you're 90, unchanged by the passage of time or the accumulation of experiences. Neuroscience has identified these two systems in the brain, mapped them, studied them, measured their distinct patterns of electrical activity. The thinker is associated with what's called the default mode network, a collection of brain regions that activate when you're lost in thought, ruminating, mind-wandering, stuck in narrative mode, thinking about the past or the future but not present in the now. This network includes the medial prefrontal cortex and the posterior cingulate cortex, and it's the source of your sense of self, your ego, your identity. The witness is associated with the salience network and present moment awareness, the brain state that activates during meditation, flow states, moments of pure presence when the mental chatter stops and you're simply here, now, fully alive, completely absorbed in what's happening. But quantum theory calls this something else. It calls it the quantum self. Your quantum self exists beyond thought. It's the field of awareness that thoughts arise from. It's not a thing. It's not located in your brain. It's not something you can point to on a scan. It's the consciousness that uses the brain to interface with physical reality. The way a musician uses an instrument to create music but is not the instrument itself. And here's the part that should blow your mind wide open, that should make you question everything you believe about free will and conscious choice. Studies in neuroscience, particularly the famous experiments by Benjamin Libet in the 1980s and replicated many times since, have shown that brain activity spikes before you're consciously aware of a decision. Researchers can predict what you're going to choose, whether you'll press a button with your left hand or your right hand up to 10 seconds before you know it yourself. By watching the electrical patterns in your brain, by measuring the readiness potential that builds before conscious awareness kicks in. Your brain knows what you're going to think before you think it. The decision has already been made at a subconscious level before your conscious mind becomes aware of it. Which means the conscious thinker, the voice in your head that believes it's making decisions, that feels like it's in control of your life, that prides itself on rational choice and careful deliberation, isn't actually in control. It's receiving information after the fact and creating a narrative that makes you feel like you were in charge the whole time, like you consciously decided to have that thought or make that choice, when in reality the decision emerged from deeper levels of consciousness, and your awareness simply observed it happening. The witness is the real you, the quantum observer, the consciousness that exists outside of time, watching thoughts emerge from the field of probability and collapse into your subjective experience of reality. This is not a philosophical position. This is not spiritual bypassing or denying your humanity. This is recognizing the actual structure of consciousness as revealed by both ancient contemplative traditions and cutting-edge neuroscience. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which thoughts occur. And that changes everything about how you relate to your mind. Now here's where everything we've talked about becomes immediately practical. Something you can use in your daily life right now to transform your experience. If thoughts are waves of probability that collapse into form based on observation, what determines which thoughts collapse? What decides whether you're going to have a moment of clarity and inspiration or spiral into anxiety and self-doubt? What's the mechanism that selects one thought from the infinite field of possibilities? Your emotional frequency. Think of it like this. Low emotions, fear, anger, shame, doubt, resentment, guilt, jealousy. These create static in your consciousness. They distort the signal. They interfere with the quantum field and cause it to collapse thoughts that match their vibration, that resonate with their frequency. When you're stuck in a low-frequency emotional state, when your nervous system is flooded with cortisol and adrenaline, when your body is in survival mode, the thoughts that collapse are chaotic, repetitive, destructive, distorted. You think in loops. You catastrophize. You focus on problems instead of solutions. You remember past failures and project them onto the future. You see threats everywhere. Your mind becomes a prison of negative probability, collapsing the same fearful thoughts over and over, strengthening the neural pathways that make those thoughts more likely to appear again tomorrow. But high emotions, love, gratitude, curiosity, peace, joy, excitement, wonder, awe, these create coherence. They organize the field. They bring clarity and order to consciousness. They tune your receiver to channels broadcasting different information. When you're in a high-frequency emotional state, when your nervous system is calm and your heart is open, when you're feeling genuinely grateful or inspired or loving, the thoughts that collapse are creative, insightful, expansive, aligned with possibility rather than limitation. You see solutions instead of problems. You remember your strengths instead of your failures. You imagine positive futures instead of catastrophic ones. You access parts of your brain that are shut down during stress. Your prefrontal cortex comes online. Your creativity flows. Your intuition speaks clearly. Your emotions are not just feelings. They're not just reactions to circumstances. They're not just chemical cascades in your body that you have to endure. They're tuning mechanisms. They're the dial on the radio that determines which station you're receiving. And the quality of your thoughts, the nature of the reality you experience, the opportunities you see or miss, the decisions you make, the actions you take, all depend entirely on the frequency you're broadcasting moment to moment. You've experienced this firsthand, even if you didn't understand what was happening. Even if you thought it was just your mood affecting your thinking. When you're stressed, when you're overwhelmed, when you're in survival mode, your mind spirals. You can't think straight. You make poor decisions. Everything feels urgent and threatening. You're trapped in negative thinking patterns that feed on themselves and grow stronger with each repetition, each loop reinforcing the neural pathways that make the next loop more likely. But when you're calm, when you're centered, when you're in a state of peace and presence, solutions appear effortlessly. Ideas flow. You see possibilities you couldn't see before, options that were invisible when you were stressed. Creativity emerges, intuition speaks, synchronicities happen. The same situation that seemed impossible yesterday suddenly has an obvious answer today. That's not coincidence. That's not luck. That's not you finally thinking clearly after being confused. That's quantum mechanics operating through your consciousness. Your emotional state is collapsing different probability waves from the quantum field, delivering different thoughts, creating different realities, opening different doors, closing others. So if thoughts aren't being created inside your brain, if they're not the product of neurons firing in isolation, generating meaning from electrical impulses and chemical reactions, then where are they coming from? The field, the unified field, the quantum field of infinite information that connects everything in existence, that underlies physical reality, that mystics have called the Akashic records or universal consciousness or the mind of God, and that physicists now describe in mathematical equations. Your mind is not a generator, it's a receiver. Like a radio tuning into different stations, your consciousness tunes into different frequencies of information that exist in the field around you, that permeate space itself, that are always broadcasting whether you're aware of them or not. Every frequency carries different information, different thought patterns, different possibilities, different versions of reality, different potentials waiting to collapse into form. When you're anxious, when fear is running your nervous system, when your amygdala has hijacked your prefrontal cortex and put you into threat detection mode, you're tuned into the fear frequency. And what do you receive? Thoughts of worst-case scenarios, memories of past failures replaying in vivid detail, projections of future disasters that feel absolutely certain to happen, mental rehearsals of everything that could go wrong, every possible threat, every potential danger. Your mind becomes a fear antenna, pulling in every possible thing to worry about from the collective field of human anxiety that's been building for millennia, that contains every fear every human has ever felt, and you tap into that frequency and download thoughts that match. When you're angry, you tune into the anger frequency. You receive thoughts that justify your rage, that build your case, that find evidence everywhere that you've been wronged, that the world is unfair, that people are terrible, that you have every right to feel this way. Your confirmation bias isn't a psychological flaw that you need to overcome through cognitive behavioral therapy. It's your consciousness tuned to a specific frequency, collapsing only the thoughts that match that vibration, filtering out everything that doesn't confirm what you already believe. But when you're inspired, when you're lit up by passion and purpose, when you're in a flow state or a moment of creative breakthrough, when you're so absorbed in what you're doing that time disappears and self-consciousness vanishes, you're tuned into the creative frequency. And what comes through? Insights that feel like they came from beyond you. Because they did. Ideas that are novel, original, surprising even to yourself. Thoughts you've never had before, expressed in ways you didn't know you were capable of. Intuitive knowing that you can't explain but you trust completely. A certainty that comes from somewhere deeper than logic. Solutions to problems you've been wrestling with for weeks that suddenly appear fully formed, elegant, obvious in retrospect but invisible moments before. You're not forcing thought. You're allowing reception. You're getting out of the way and letting information flow through you from a source that's infinitely more intelligent than your conscious mind, from the unified field that contains all knowledge, all creativity, all wisdom. This explains everything that's ever been mysterious about human cognition, all those phenomena that psychology can describe but never quite explain. Why breakthroughs happen in the shower, when you're relaxed and not trying. When the hot water is washing over you and your mind is allowed to wander freely. Why you suddenly remember something the moment you stop trying to remember it. When you give up and think about something else and then boom, there it is. Why the best ideas come when your mind is quiet, when you're walking in nature or staring out the window or just waking up from sleep. In that hypnagogic state between dreaming and waking, when the veil between conscious and subconscious is thinnest. Why artists and inventors and scientists throughout history have described their greatest work as something that came through them rather than from them. As if they were channeling something larger than themselves. Einstein called it tapping into the field of infinite intelligence, and he spent hours each day in quiet contemplation, tuning his mind to receive insights from beyond his conscious awareness. Tesla said his inventions appeared to him fully formed in vision so clear he could examine them from every angle. And he simply wrote them down, translated them from consciousness into blueprints. Mozart claimed entire symphonies downloaded into his mind in an instant, complete and perfect, and his only job was to transcribe what he heard. Every great creator throughout history understood this fundamental truth. Thoughts are not yours, they flow through you. You are an antenna, a receiver, a vessel for information that exists in a field beyond the boundaries of your individual mind. But here's the problem, and this is where most people are stuck right now without even realizing it. Without understanding why their mental life feels so heavy and exhausting. Most people are tuned into the wrong frequency and they don't even know it. They've been locked into low-frequency thinking for so long that it feels normal. It feels like that's just who they are, like they're naturally anxious or pessimistic or critical. Like their mind is just wired that way and there's nothing they can do about it. Overthinking is not intelligence. Let me say that again because this is crucial. Overthinking is not a sign that you're smart or careful or thorough. It's incoherence. It's your mind stuck in a feedback loop, collapsing the same low-frequency thoughts over and over again, creating a mental prison that gets stronger every time you loop through the same patterns, every time you rehearse the same worries, every time you replay the same memories looking for different meanings. It's like a record skipping on the same groove, playing the same 3 seconds of a song for hours, never moving forward, never resolving, just repeating endlessly until the sound becomes unbearable, but you can't stop listening. Emotional hijacking happens when your stress response takes over the tuning dial. When trauma, when unresolved pain, when fear and survival mode lock you into channels you didn't consciously choose, channels that broadcast nothing but threat and danger and worst-case scenarios. Your nervous system gets stuck in fight or flight, and suddenly you're no longer controlling what you think about. Your biology is. Your amygdala is. The oldest parts of your brain, the parts that evolved to keep you alive in a world full of predators, are broadcasting fear signals that override your conscious intentions, that shut down your prefrontal cortex and make rational thinking nearly impossible. You can want to be calm. You can know rationally that everything is fine, that there's no real threat, that you're safe. But the thoughts that collapse are still panicked, still catastrophic, still convinced that something terrible is about to happen, because your body is in a state that collapses those thoughts automatically. And here's the real trap, the thing that keeps people stuck in this pattern for years or even decades, the thing that makes anxiety and depression so persistent and difficult to overcome. Negative thoughts amplify under stress. When you're in survival mode, when your nervous system believes you're under threat, when cortisol is flooding your system and your heart rate is elevated and your breathing is shallow, your brain prioritizes threat detection above everything else. It's trying to keep you alive, so it scans the environment constantly for danger, for anything that could hurt you, for any sign that you need to run or fight or hide. And because the brain is designed to find what it's looking for, because attention shapes perception, it finds threats everywhere. Every neutral situation becomes potentially dangerous. Every ambiguous interaction becomes evidence that people don't like you. Every possibility becomes a problem waiting to happen. Every unknown becomes something to fear. You're no longer thinking, you're looping. You're collapsing the same negative probability waves over and over, strengthening the neural pathways that make those thoughts more likely to appear next time, creating what neuroscientists call a strange attractor, a pattern of brain activity that your consciousness gets pulled into automatically whenever you're stressed. And the more you loop, the stronger that frequency becomes. It carves grooves in your brain. It rewires your default state. It becomes your baseline, your set point, the place your mind returns to whenever you're not consciously directing it elsewhere. Until one day you wake up and you can't remember who you were before the noise. You can't remember what it felt like to have a quiet mind, a peaceful inner world, thoughts that inspired you instead of exhausting you. You've been hijacked by a frequency you never chose, broadcasting thoughts you don't want, creating a reality you never asked for, living a life that feels like it's happening to you rather than through you. So how do you break free? How do you reclaim your mental vitality and tune your consciousness back to a frequency that serves you? You recalibrate. You intentionally shift the signal. You take back control not of your thoughts, because you can't control which thoughts appear, but of the frequency you're broadcasting, which determines which thoughts collapse from the field of probability. First, stillness. Your mind cannot tune properly when it's flooded with stimulation. When you're constantly consuming information, constantly distracted, constantly moving from one thing to another without pause, when you're scrolling through social media or binging shows or listening to podcasts every waking moment, your consciousness never gets a chance to reset. The signal never clears, the static never stops. Silence is not emptiness, it's not boredom, it's not wasting time. Silence is the reset button. It's the space where the static clears and you can hear the signal again, where your consciousness can recalibrate to its natural frequency instead of being constantly pulled into whatever frequency the external world is broadcasting. Just 10 minutes a day of complete silence, no phone, no music, no podcast, no mental planning, just you sitting in stillness doing absolutely nothing is enough to begin shifting your baseline frequency. Enough to start clearing the channels and allowing your mind to tune into higher stations. Second, breath. This is not woo-woo. This is not new age nonsense. This is neuroscience. Conscious breathing shifts your nervous system out of survival mode and into coherence. It activates your parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest response, which immediately changes your emotional frequency. When you slow your breath, when you breathe deeply and intentionally, extending your exhale longer than your inhale, you're sending a signal to your brain that you're safe. And when your brain receives that signal, when your vagus nerve communicates to your amygdala that there's no threat, it stops collapsing survival-based thoughts and starts opening to higher frequencies. 5 minutes of conscious breathing, real breathing where you're fully present with each inhale and exhale, can completely change the quality of thoughts you receive for the next hour. This isn't placebo. This is measurable. Heart rate variability increases, brainwave patterns shift from beta to alpha. Cortisol levels drop. And with those physiological changes come different thoughts, different possibilities, different versions of reality becoming available. Third, observe your thoughts without attaching to them. This is the practice that changes everything. The skill that separates those who are controlled by their thoughts from those who use their thoughts as tools. The moment you notice a thought without reacting to it, without believing it, without identifying with it, without needing to change it or argue with it or push it away, you shift from thinker to witness. And the witness has power. The thinker is at the mercy of whatever thoughts collapse. It believes them, reacts to them, gets swept up in them, defends them, builds entire belief systems around them. But the witness sees thoughts as passing phenomena. It watches them arise, notes them with curiosity, examines them with interest but not attachment, and lets them go. And in that space of observation, in that gap between thought and reaction, you break the loop. You stop feeding the negative frequency with your attention and emotional energy. You starve it. And without fuel, without the emotional charge that keeps thoughts alive and strong, it weakens. The neural pathways begin to prune. The strange attractor loses its pull. The frequency that once dominated your consciousness begins to fade. Fourth, tune into higher states intentionally. This is not about positive thinking or forcing yourself to feel good when you don't. This is not about denying negative emotions or pretending everything is fine when it's not. This is about recognizing that gratitude, awe, curiosity, love, these are not just nice feelings that make life pleasant. They're frequencies. They're tuning mechanisms that attract different thoughts from the quantum field, that collapse different probability waves, that open doors to information and insights and possibilities that are completely unavailable when you're in lower frequencies. When you spend even 2 minutes in genuine gratitude, not just thinking about what you're grateful for, but feeling it in your body, experiencing the actual emotion of thankfulness for something in your life, something specific and real, your heart rhythm becomes coherent. Your brain synchronizes, and in that coherence, in that alignment between heart and mind, you shift your frequency. And in that shift, different thoughts become available. Solutions you couldn't see before suddenly obvious. Perspectives you couldn't access now clear. Information that was always there but you were tuned to the wrong channel to receive it now flows in naturally. Here's what happens when you do this consistently, not just once in a while when you remember or when things get really bad, but as a daily practice, as a way of life, as seriously as you take brushing your teeth or eating food. Your baseline frequency rises. The thoughts that collapse become clearer, kinder, more aligned with your true self, with the person you actually want to be rather than the person your conditioning has made you. The negative loops lose their grip. The anxiety quiets. The overthinking slows down. The critical voice softens. And gradually, sometimes suddenly, you realize that the quality of your inner world has fundamentally changed. You stop living in reaction, at the mercy of whatever thought happens to appear, dancing like a puppet to strings you can't see. You start living in creation, consciously tuning your mind to the frequencies that serve your highest vision, that align with your deepest values, that call forth the best version of yourself. And the mind that once felt like a prison, that felt like an enemy you had to battle every day, that exhausted you with its constant noise and negativity, becomes a portal, a gateway to infinite intelligence, infinite possibility, infinite versions of who you could become. The mind is not where thoughts come from. It's where they land. Your brain is not generating consciousness, it's receiving it, translating it, filtering it through your unique biology and history and personality. But the source, the origin, the place where thoughts actually come from is beyond you. It's the quantum field, the unified field, the consciousness that underlies all of reality, that connects every mind that has ever existed, that contains every thought that has ever been thought and every thought that ever will be thought. You are not the thinker. You never were. You are the space in which thoughts arise, the awareness that watches, the observer that collapses probability waves into the specific reality you experience. And when you understand that, when you really get it, not just intellectually but in your bones, in your direct experience, when you've sat in stillness long enough to watch thoughts appear and dissolve like bubbles, everything changes. You stop fighting your mind. You stop trying to control every thought. You stop believing that you have to fix yourself or overcome your psychology or win the battle against your own brain. Instead, you start tuning it. You start recognizing that you're operating a receiver, and your job is not to generate the perfect thoughts, but to tune into the frequency that broadcasts them. You start taking responsibility not for the thoughts that appear, which is impossible, but for the emotional frequency you're holding, because that's what you actually have control over. That's where your power actually lies. You begin to see that every moment is a choice. Not a choice of what to think, but a choice of what frequency to embody. Fear or love, scarcity or abundance, contraction or expansion, judgment or curiosity, resistance or acceptance. And with that choice comes a completely different set of thoughts, a completely different version of reality, collapsing from the field of infinite potential. This is not self-help. This is not manifestation mysticism. This is quantum mechanics applied to consciousness. This is the cutting edge of neuroscience meeting ancient wisdom and pointing to the same truth that mystics have known for thousands of years but couldn't prove scientifically. You are more than your thoughts. You are the awareness in which thoughts appear. And when you step into that awareness, when you live from the witness instead of the thinker, when you recognize yourself as the observer rather than the observed, you access a power that most people never discover. The power to recalibrate your frequency at will. The power to tune into channels of information that most people never know exist. The power to collapse probability waves that align with your highest potential instead of your deepest fears. The power to live from a place of clarity, creativity, and coherence instead of chaos, confusion, and compulsion. This is what it means to wake up, not to some abstract spiritual state where you float above human experience, but to the actual mechanics of how consciousness works. To the reality that you are not an isolated mind trapped in a body, generating thoughts in isolation, separate from everything else. You are a receiver tuned into an infinite field of intelligence, and the quality of your life, the nature of your reality, the trajectory of your future, all depend on which frequency you choose to broadcast. So the question is not whether you can change your thoughts. The question is whether you're willing to change your frequency. Because when you do, the thoughts change automatically. New possibilities collapse into your awareness. Solutions appear that were invisible before. The path forward becomes clear, and the person you've been trying to become through force and willpower and endless mental effort simply emerges naturally, effortlessly, as the inevitable result of tuning into a higher station. The most powerful version of you isn't the one who thinks the hardest, who tries the most, who forces and pushes and struggles to control their mind. The most powerful version of you is the one who watches, who listens, who tunes into the frequency of truth and lets the quantum field deliver the thoughts that match. That version of you has been waiting your entire life for you to stop identifying with the thinker and recognize yourself as the witness, the observer, the consciousness that has always been here, watching every thought arise and pass away like waves on an infinite ocean. That's who you really are. And now you know.